Hours had passed since Jasmine left, slamming the door behind her. The house, usually filled with noise, was eerily silent. The air smelled faintly of her perfume, sweet and overpowering. It lingered in the room, a reminder of everything that had been left unsaid. But what bothered me more than the scent was the quiet. It was different this time. It was the kind of silence that made you feel like something was about to happen. I stood in the kitchen, hands resting on the counter, my gaze fixed on the fridge. Silence used to be comforting, a moment for reflection after a long day, but now it felt suffocating, like it was all I had left. My stomach growled loudly, a reminder of how much I had neglected myself in favor of others. I opened the cabinet slowly, hoping for something familiar, something that would offer a small sense of comfort. But when I reached for the jar of grits, my usual go-to, something felt off. It was lighter than it should have been. I opened it to find it almost empty, with just a few grains left at the bottom. Everything had been taken. My peace, my stability, and even my food. Jasmine had left me with nothing but empty promises. I closed the jar, the sound of glass against the counter echoing in the silence. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I couldn't keep waiting for her to fix things. I couldn't keep allowing myself to be pushed aside. The silence in the house was almost overwhelming. Jasmine's absence had left an emptiness that I hadn't realized I was living with all this time. Her bags were gone, and with them, the noise that used to fill the space. But in the quiet, I could hear my own thoughts more clearly now. And that was something I wasn't ready for. I walked toward her room. It had always been a mess, clothes scattered everywhere, makeup bottles that seemed to never find their place, papers piling up like she was too busy with the world outside to care about the world inside. But today, I wasn't looking to clean up her mess. I was searching for something more important than that. I reached under a pile of old magazines and found it, a crumpled piece of paper. I straightened it out and stared at it in disbelief. It was Jasmine's flight itinerary and hotel reservation. The total cost of her trip, more than 3 months of my hard-earned savings. I had spent years working, sacrificing, and saving every penny for her future. And there she was, using all of it for herself without a second thought. I was furious, not because of the money, but because of the years I had given her. Years of my life spent ensuring she had what she wanted, all for nothing. She had taken everything I had to offer and left me with nothing. But in that moment, something clicked. This wasn't about the money or the trip. It was about me, about what I had been willing to sacrifice for her and what I had lost in the process. It was time to stop letting her take from me. I wasn't going to let her control my life anymore. I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the pieces of my life, memories of a past I had held onto for so long. The old buffet in the corner, once a symbol of family history, now seemed like just another piece of furniture. It had always been filled with the things I cherished, heirlooms passed down through generations. But Jasmine never cared about those things. They were just objects to her, things that didn't matter. I ran my hand over the polished surface of the silver spoons, the ones I had dreamed about handing down one day. But I had to face the truth. Jasmine never would have appreciated them. She would have discarded them the moment they no longer suited her. In that moment, something inside me snapped. These objects, this history, had no meaning if they were just going to collect dust. If Jasmine didn't value them, then it was time to let go of everything I had held on to for her. I didn't need to sacrifice for someone who didn't care. It was time to live for me. I picked up the phone. I had seen an ad for an antiques buyer, and without thinking twice, I dialed the number. A man named Mr. Sterling answered, and we quickly arranged to meet the next morning. It wasn't just about the money. It was about reclaiming control, taking a stand for myself. Jasmine wasn't coming back to fix things. If I wanted change, I would have to create it myself. That night, I sat by the buffet, watching the objects I had once valued fade into the background. My hands trembled with a mix of fear and excitement. I wasn't sure what was driving me forward. Was it courage or desperation? But I knew I couldn't keep waiting for someone else to change my life. It was my turn to take action. The next morning, the doorbell rang, exactly as scheduled. I stood up from the chair where I had spent the night thinking about what was to come and walked toward the door. When I opened it, there he was, Mr. Alistair Sterling, a man dressed in a sharp, gray suit, looking every bit the professional. His presence exuded confidence, like someone who had seen it all, someone who understood value in a way I never could have imagined. "Good morning," he said with a polite smile, stepping inside without hesitation. His eyes moved around the room, scanning the surroundings as if he were already appraising every item in sight. He didn't comment on the changes in the house, on the empty spaces where once heavy furniture stood, or the absence of things that used to hold significance. "You have a lovely home," he said as his eyes landed on the buffet. There behind the glass the antiques sat, my grandmother's silver spoons, china, and crystal, each one a piece of a life I had worked so hard to preserve. But now they didn't hold the same meaning. I wasn't going to let these things weigh me down anymore. I wasn't going to spend my life holding on to things that meant nothing to the people I loved. I motioned for him to follow me to the buffet. The time had come. "Let's get down to business," I said, my voice steady despite the fluttering in my chest. There was no more hesitation. I opened the velvet-lined case and revealed the silver spoons, the ones I had dreamed of passing down to Jasmine one day. "These are a part of my family's history," I explained, my voice calm but firm. "They were meant for something special, but that day will never come, and now they're just things. Things that don't mean anything to my daughter." Mr. Sterling examined them closely, running his fingers over the engraving. He muttered something about their impeccable condition, but his interest was more professional than personal. "I'll make you an offer," he said, his tone practical. I could tell he was underestimating their value. It wasn't about the price tag, it was about the principle. "No," I replied firmly, "I want more. I know what these are worth, and I know the right buyer would pay a lot more than what you're offering." He blinked in surprise, clearly not expecting my response, but after a brief moment of thought, he nodded. "All right, we'll come to a fair agreement." As he left with the case of silver, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't about the money, it was about the feeling of taking back control. I wasn't going to let Jasmine or anyone else determine my worth. I had been giving, sacrificing for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to do something for myself. That day, I didn't go home and wait for the next phone call or the next apology. I walked to the door, stepped out into the fresh air, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was truly living. The market was just as I remembered, bustling with life, filled with the kind of things I had always wanted but never dared to buy. I walked through the aisles, my head held high, my shoulders back. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. The air smelled of fresh bread, spices, and sweetness. I didn't flinch at the prices on the items. For once, I wasn't worried about spending too much. I picked up a block of rich cheese, a bottle of vintage wine, and even splurged on some fresh seafood, something I had always told myself I couldn't afford. Today, I wasn't making excuses. Today, I was living for myself. I wandered through the aisles, moving past shelves stacked with fruits and nuts, and finally found myself at the deli counter. The man behind the counter recognized me immediately, his smile warm. "What can I get you, ma'am?" I looked at the selection of meats, cheeses, and olives, and for the first time in forever, I didn't hesitate. "I'll take half a pound of prosciutto," I said, my voice steady, "and some of that aged cheddar." "Oh, and the stuffed olives." It wasn't just about food. It was about taking back control of my life, reclaiming the joy I had buried under years of sacrifice. This wasn't about survival anymore, this was about living. For the first time in so long, I was doing something just for me. I left the market, my arms full of bags, but the weight of those bags didn't feel heavy. They felt freeing. As I walked home, I realized it wasn't the items I had bought that were important, it was the freedom I had gained by choosing to live for myself. When I got home, I didn't go straight to the kitchen. I didn't feel the need to rush. Today was different. Today I was going to sit at the table, the same table I used to set for Jasmine, hoping one day she would see the value of what I had done for her. But today I was going to set it for me. I took out the fine white tablecloth, the one Jasmine always told me not to use because it was too delicate. "You'll stain it, Mama," she'd always say, but today it wasn't just a tablecloth. It was a symbol of what I had left behind. I spread it across the table, laid out the best plates I owned, the ones that had been hidden away, and placed the silver fork beside the plate. Then I took out the food, cheese, prosciutto, olives, a fresh baguette, and the 2 perfect peaches I had picked up just because I could. I poured myself a glass of dark, rich wine, something I never would have allowed myself before. As I sat down, I took a bite of the peach, the sweet juice spilling onto my lips. For the first time in a long while, I tasted something more than just food. I tasted freedom. I tasted the sweetness of finally choosing myself. I wasn't hungry just for food. I was hungry for my life, for my own life. And this meal, this moment, was the beginning of the life I was finally claiming as my own. The phone rang later that evening, its familiar tone breaking the peaceful silence I had been savoring all day. I didn't need to check the caller ID to know who it was. Jasmine. She always called at this hour as if to check in, to see if I was still here, still waiting for her to come back and fix everything. But tonight, I wasn't her backup plan. I took a deep breath, set my wine glass down on the table, and answered the call. The soft click of the receiver was like a signal, and I knew I wasn't going to answer this call the same way I always had. "Hello," I said, my voice steady but firm, more firm than I expected it to sound. "Mama," Jasmine's voice crackled through the line, too cheerful for my taste. "I'm back. I hope you've been doing okay. You know, I've been thinking about you the whole time. Are you still alive?" She laughed, but I didn't join in. "Not today. Today was different." "I'm alive, Jasmine," I replied calmly, "and I've been doing just fine." There was a pause, a long one, as if she was waiting for me to crack, for me to start pleading with her, to tell her how much I missed her, how I needed her. But I didn't. I was done waiting for her to fix things. I was done playing that part. "Well, I hope you're eating okay, Mama," she continued, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "You know, you've got to make sure you boil those grits right, add some butter, and you'll be just fine, right?" Her words stung. It was as though she still thought I was the same woman who needed her to take care of everything. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't dependent on her for comfort. "I'm managing just fine," I responded, keeping my voice calm, but there was a new strength in it that surprised even me. "Thanks for the advice, though." She didn't catch the shift in my tone. Instead, she went on, trying to regain some control over the situation, pretending like everything was still the same. "Oh, Mama, you're probably bored there all alone, huh? I figured you haven't even been to the store. I saw this cute fridge magnet shaped like a dolphin that I thought you'd like. I'll bring it for you when I get back." It was the same old routine, the same condescending tone, as though I was just waiting for her to come back and save me, but I wasn't waiting anymore. "I'm not bored, Jasmine," I said, my voice now firm and even. "In fact, I've been quite busy living for myself." There was a slight hesitation on the other end of the line. She didn't know how to respond to that. She didn't know how to respond to the truth that I wasn't the same woman anymore. I wasn't just a background player in her life. "Well, that's good to hear, Mama," she said, her voice trying to sound sweet again. "Just don't get too crazy while I'm gone. You know how you can be. Don't forget to turn off the lights when you're done in the bathroom, though. You always forget that, and I'll have to pay for it later." There it was again, the control, the assumption that I owed her something. I had been her caretaker for far too long, but I wasn't doing that anymore. "I'll be sure to do that, Jasmine," I said, my patience finally thinning, "but I'm sure you've got plenty to worry about with your vacation." "You don't need to worry about me." She laughed again, but this time there was a tightness to it. I could tell she was starting to feel uncomfortable, but she pressed on, now with a more serious tone. "All right, well, don't go too crazy with your savings, okay? I'll be home soon and we'll figure things out." Her words hung in the air like an unspoken threat, but I wasn't listening anymore. The warmth from the wine had filled my body, and the satisfaction of my meal still lingered on my tongue. It wasn't just the food, it was the freedom that came with it. The freedom to live for myself, to take back control of my life. "All right, Mama, I'll talk to you later," she said before hanging up, leaving me with nothing but silence. And in that silence, I knew things had changed. Jasmine wouldn't be walking back in here and taking over my life anymore. 2 weeks had passed since Jasmine left, and the house had never felt quieter. It was as if a weight had been lifted, the kind of weight that you don't realize you're carrying until it's gone. The peace was almost too much to bear, but I was starting to enjoy it. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, letting the sunlight pour in through the windows. It felt good, like I was finally breathing freely for the first time in years. But I knew the calm wouldn't last. The silence was just the calm before the storm, and I could feel it building up. I had prepared myself for this moment, but now that it was here, I wasn't sure what to expect. The doorbell rang. I didn't even flinch. I didn't need to check the time or the door. I knew who it was. It was Jasmine. I stood up slowly, walking to the door, my heart steady. When I opened it, there she was, standing in the doorway with a fake smile plastered on her face. She looked like she had just stepped out of a vacation brochure, tanned, carefree, with her hair styled like she had just returned from a beachside resort. "I'm home, Mama," she said too brightly, her voice carrying into the house. "Hope you didn't miss me too much." She stepped inside, her heels clicking sharply against the floor as if trying to take back the space she once controlled. But she didn't know, not yet, that this wasn't the same house she had left behind. This wasn't the same woman. I stayed where I was, sitting at the kitchen table. I didn't rush to greet her. I didn't feel the need to. This time I was the one in control. She paused in the doorway, her eyes scanning the room like she was trying to figure out what had changed. There was no clutter, no mess. Everything was clear, clean, and for the first time in years, it felt like my space. "Why's it so quiet in here?" she asked, taking a few more steps inside. "What happened to the chaos? Where's everything? Did you sell everything while I was gone?" I didn't answer immediately. I let her take it all in, the empty spaces, the fresh flowers on the counter, the calm. Her gaze flicked from one place to another, confusion building in her eyes. She didn't know what to make of it. "Where's the rug?" "The clock?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Where's all the silver, the china? What happened to everything?" I took my time. There was no need to rush, no need to explain myself. Slowly, I took a sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch between us. Finally, I spoke. "It's all gone, Jasmine," I said quietly, my voice steady. "I sold everything." She froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. She took a step back as though the words had physically knocked her off balance. "You sold everything," she whispered, her voice rising with panic. "What the hell, Mama? That was my inheritance." I could hear the desperation in her voice. She wasn't just surprised, she was scared. Scared that her plan, her idea of what her life would be, was falling apart. "It wasn't your inheritance," I replied, standing up slowly. "It was mine, and I decided to sell it. I decided to live for me for once." Her expression flickered from disbelief to anger. "You sold the china, the spoons, the brooch. What did you do with everything? Did you give it away to some stranger?" She was starting to panic, rushing to the fridge like she was looking for something to prove I had made a mistake. Her eyes landed on the bottles of expensive wine, the caviar, the fruits, all things I had bought for myself, things I had never allowed myself before. "What is all this?" she gasped, recoiling in shock. "Where did you get the money for all of this? You're telling me you sold everything for this? You sold my inheritance for food?" I stood still, watching her scramble for answers, but there was no more fear in me. I had already made my decision. "That's right," I said softly. "I bought food, the kind of food I deserve, the kind of life I deserve." Her face twisted in a mixture of confusion and rage. She slapped the fridge door shut, her chest rising and falling rapidly as if she couldn't process what was happening. "I worked for that inheritance," she shouted, her voice trembling with anger. "I sacrificed for it, and you," she pointed a shaking finger at me, her eyes wild, "you ate through it. You sold everything?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I wasn't asking for permission, Jasmine," I replied firmly. "I wasn't asking for your approval. I was hungry and you left me with nothing." She stood there, staring at me, her breath coming in ragged gasps. You're crazy," she hissed. "You're out of your mind. You think you can just throw everything away?" "No," I said calmly, taking a step closer to her. "I'm not throwing everything away. I'm taking control of my life. I'm not waiting for you to fix things anymore." Jasmine's eyes were wide with disbelief. Her lips trembled, and for a moment I thought she might break down, but instead she turned on her heel, her face filled with disgust. "Fine," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You've won this round, but don't think this is over. I'll make your life hell for this. You'll regret it." I didn't say another word. I watched her storm out, the door slamming behind her, but this time I didn't feel that familiar knot of guilt. I didn't feel the weight of her expectations dragging me down. For the first time in years, I felt free. Jasmine had stormed out, leaving nothing but the sound of the door slamming in her wake. The anger in her words echoed in my mind, but I wasn't scared. I wasn't broken. This time, it was different. This time, I wasn't the woman who let her walk all over me. I stood still in the middle of the living room, my heart steady. The silence had returned, but it wasn't oppressive. It wasn't the silence of waiting for something to change, it was the silence of peace, the kind of peace I hadn't known in years. But Jasmine's words, her fury, still lingered in the air. I knew she wouldn't stay gone forever. She would return, expecting things to be the same, but I wasn't going to let that happen. I had made my decision, and I wasn't going to let her take it all away again. I walked to the window and looked outside, the sun beginning to set on the horizon. The calmness of the evening felt almost surreal. I had made so many sacrifices for others, for Jasmine, always hoping that one day she would see what I had done for her, that she would appreciate it. But that day never came, it had never mattered to her. The phone rang again. I didn't have to look at the screen to know who it was. Jasmine. She always called at this time, like she was testing the waters, making sure I was still here, still waiting for her. But this time I wasn't answering the way I had before. I stood there, the phone ringing, the seconds ticking by. For once, I wasn't waiting for her. I didn't feel the need to explain myself. I didn't need her approval. I picked up the receiver, and when I spoke, my voice was calm, unwavering. "Hello, Mama," Jasmine's voice crackled through the line, her tone cold, almost calculating. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you've finally gotten rid of me? Well, you haven't." I didn't interrupt her. I knew where this was going. She was angry and she didn't understand. She wouldn't understand, not yet. "You think you can just sell everything and be fine? You think you can just walk away from all of it, all the sacrifices I made for you, all the things I did for you?" She spat, her voice rising in fury. "You've ruined everything, Mama." I let her words wash over me. They didn't have the same power they once did. Jasmine's anger, her threats, were no longer my problem. I had stopped being the one who bent over backward for her. "I didn't ruin anything, Jasmine," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not going to let you make me feel guilty for taking control of my life. I'm done sacrificing for you. I've lived my whole life trying to make sure you had what you wanted, but what did I get in return? You took everything I had to offer and left me with nothing." I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end of the line, the weight of my words sinking in. She had no answer for me, no words to throw back at me. "You'll regret this," she finally hissed. "I'll make sure you regret everything, you'll see." I didn't respond. I wasn't going to engage in her games anymore. There was nothing left to say. I hung up the phone slowly, deliberately, and placed it back on the receiver. I wasn't waiting for Jasmine anymore. She could threaten me, she could say whatever she wanted, but I was done. I had found something in myself that I had lost long ago. I had reclaimed my peace, my freedom, and this time I wasn't giving it up for anyone. Jasmine's words lingered in the air long after I hung up the phone. The silence that followed was different from the one I had experienced before. It wasn't oppressive. It wasn't a void of anticipation or dread. It was simply mine. I stood in the middle of the living room, the space around me now feeling more like a sanctuary than a home filled with memories of things I'd given away, sacrificed for someone who never truly appreciated them. The furniture was gone, the clutter cleared, but in its place was something I couldn't see before: freedom. I looked around, seeing the empty spaces not as loss but as a chance for something new. Jasmine's absence wasn't just her leaving. It was a chance for me to rebuild, to fill the space with my own desires, my own choices. I walked over to the window and stared outside, watching the sun dip below the horizon. I felt lighter, freer. For so long, I had lived my life for her, hoping one day she'd see all I had done, hoping that someday she would realize the sacrifices I made for her. But I had to face the truth: Jasmine might never appreciate it. And if I kept waiting for her to come around, I would be waiting forever. And I wasn't waiting anymore. The phone rang once more, the same familiar ringtone. I didn't even need to check the caller ID to know who it was. Jasmine. I felt a strange sense of peace as I picked it up. This time there was no fear, no guilt, just calm. "Hello," I said, my voice steady, my heart calm. "Mama, you've made a mistake. You'll regret this." "I'll make your life miserable." Jasmine's voice crackled through the line, raw with anger. I didn't flinch. I didn't feel the need to defend myself. "I've already made my choice, Jasmine," I said softly. "I'm living my life now. You don't get to control me anymore." There was silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, the realization dawning on her that this was no longer a game, no longer something she could manipulate. This time, she wouldn't get her way. "I'm done trying to make you love me, Jasmine. I've spent my whole life sacrificing for you, and you never once appreciated it. Now, it's my time." The words hung in the air like a weight being lifted. I wasn't going to let her threats, her guilt, or her anger pull me back into a life of waiting, of wondering when things would get better. This was my life, and I wasn't asking for permission to live it. I've found peace, Jasmine, and nothing you say will take that away. And with that, I hung up the phone, not out of anger, but out of a quiet certainty. The world felt different now, lighter. For the first time, it was my life to live. I had let go of everything I thought I needed to hold onto, her expectations, her demands, and the life I had been trying to create for her. And in its place, I had found myself. Thank you for taking this journey with me. This is the story of one woman's journey from sacrifice to self-empowerment, from loss to freedom. Have you ever felt like you were living for someone else, always sacrificing your own peace for others? How did you find the strength to reclaim your life? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Life is full of moments where we have to choose ourselves. Let's keep having these important conversations. Remember, your life is yours to live, and no one else can take that from you. Until next time.